What if I told you that everything you've been searching for, happiness, clarity, peace, is already within you? Imagine this. A single, honest glance could unlock the door to all your answers. Would you be brave enough to look? Now, before you answer, let me ask you this. What happens when the mirror doesn't just reveal your beauty, but also your deepest flaws and fears? Welcome to the story of the Mirror of Truth, a tale that has transformed countless lives over centuries. But this is more than just a story. It's a reflection of you, me, and every person who's ever asked, who am I really? In our busy lives, we chase after so much: success, approval, material comfort. We're constantly looking outward, hoping that the next achievement or the next possession will finally make us feel whole. Yet, why does fulfillment always seem just out of reach? This is where our story begins. A restless soul, someone much like you, embarks on a journey to find answers. What they discover changes their life forever, not because the answers were far away, but because they were hidden within, waiting to be uncovered. The Mirror of Truth is an ancient legend from Buddhist teachings, passed down to help seekers find their true selves. The mirror doesn't lie, it shows you everything: the good, the bad, the light, and the shadows. But here's the catch: it only works for those courageous enough to face it. So what do you think happens when the seeker finally gazes into the mirror? Do they find clarity or chaos? Keep watching, because by the end of this story, you may just find yourself standing before your own mirror of truth. Our story begins in a quiet village, nestled between towering mountains and sprawling green valleys. Life in the village was simple, yet one man, whom we'll call Sanyu, found himself deeply unsettled. Despite having everything he thought he wanted, an abundant harvest, a loving family, and the respect of his neighbors, he felt an emptiness that gnawed at his soul. Sanyu had heard whispers of a mystical place high in the mountains, a temple that housed the fabled Mirror of Truth. Villagers spoke of it with awe and caution, saying it could reveal the deepest secrets of one's soul. Some claimed to have found enlightenment after gazing into the mirror, while others warned that it showed truths too difficult to bear. These conflicting stories fueled Sanyu's curiosity. Could the mirror give him the answers he sought? Could it explain the restless yearning that plagued him? One morning, as the first rays of sunlight painted the village in gold, Sanyu made a decision. He packed a small satchel with food and water and set out on his journey. The path ahead was steep and treacherous, but Sanyu felt a strange pull, as if the mountains themselves were calling him. Sanyu's first challenge came as he entered a dense forest at the mountain's base. The towering trees blocked out the sun, and the air was thick with the chirping of unseen insects. As night fell, shadows danced around him and doubt crept into his mind. What if the villagers were right, he thought. What if this journey leads to nothing? But then he remembered something an old monk had once told him. The darkest forests hide the most beautiful clearings. Gathering his courage, Sanyu pressed on, repeating the monk's words to himself like a mantra. Sure enough, by dawn, he emerged from the forest to find a breathtaking meadow bathed in light. It was as if the universe was rewarding him for his persistence. This moment taught Sanyu his first lesson: fear is a shadow that fades when faced with courage. With renewed determination, he continued his climb. Further up the mountain, Sanyu encountered a wide, rushing river blocking his path. The water was cold and turbulent, and there was no bridge in sight. He searched for hours, growing increasingly frustrated, until he spotted a narrow section where he might be able to cross by jumping from rock to rock. But as he stood at the river's edge, doubts swirled in his mind. Sanyu hesitated. What if I slip? What if I fall and the river sweeps me away? He thought about turning back, but a voice inside him whispered, "The river is just another obstacle. Your goal lies beyond it." With a deep breath, Sanyu stepped onto the first rock, then the next. His movements were cautious but deliberate, and before he knew it, he was on the other side. The river taught Sanyu his second lesson: trust in yourself and take one step at a time. Even the wildest waters can be crossed with focus and faith. After days of climbing, Sanyu finally approached the temple. The air was thin and his legs ached with every step. The temple stood on a narrow cliff, its golden roof glinting in the sunlight. As Sanyu ascended the final stretch, he was struck by an overwhelming sense of awe. The temple seemed to radiate a quiet power, as if it were alive. Sanyu pushed open the heavy wooden doors and entered a vast hall lined with intricate carvings of deities and sages. At the center of the room stood the Mirror of Truth, framed in ornate gold and reflecting the dim light of the temple's oil lamps. For a moment, Sanyu hesitated, his heart pounding. He had come so far. What if the mirror revealed something he wasn't ready to face? Standing before the mirror, Sanyu realized the most profound lesson of his journey so far. The greatest obstacles were not the forest, the river, or the mountain. They were the fears and doubts within himself. The trials had been a reflection of his inner struggles, and overcoming them had prepared him for this moment. As Sanyu stood before the Mirror of Truth, his heart pounded in his chest. The golden frame seemed to hum with an energy that filled the room, and the polished surface shone like liquid silver. Slowly he stepped closer until his reflection became clear. But this was no ordinary reflection. It was alive, dynamic, and deeply unsettling. At first, Sanyu saw himself as he appeared to the world. A hard-working man, weathered by time and effort, with eyes that spoke of quiet determination. But as he continued to gaze, the image began to shift. His reflection revealed not just his strengths, but also his weaknesses, his flaws, and his deepest fears. He saw the moments of jealousy he had tried to ignore, the anger he had justified, and the insecurities he had hidden from even himself. Suddenly, a voice seemed to echo from the depths of the mirror, not in words, but in feelings and impressions. It was as if the mirror was asking him questions. Why do you hide from your fears? Why do you cling to an image of perfection when your true self is so much more beautiful? The questions pierced through Sanyu's defenses, and tears welled up in his eyes. He wanted to look away, but he couldn't. The mirror held him captive, forcing him to confront everything he had buried. As Sanyu stood there, trembling, the images began to change again. This time, he saw flashes of his potential, the kindness he had shown to others, the resilience that had carried him through difficult times, and the love he had given freely. The mirror didn't just reflect his flaws, it reflected his light. For the first time, Sanyu understood that he was not defined by his mistakes or his successes. He was a whole complex being, full of imperfections and beauty alike. The Mirror of Truth wasn't there to judge Sanyu. It wasn't there to punish or praise. It was there to reveal. And in its reflection, Sanyu found the lesson he had been searching for. True peace comes not from denying who you are, but from embracing it fully, flaws and all. At that moment, Sanyu had a choice. He could turn away from the mirror, retreating back into the comfort of his old life, or he could accept what he had seen and begin the work of living authentically. Taking a deep breath, he whispered to the mirror, "I see you and I see myself, thank you." With those words, the mirror's glow dimmed and the room grew still. Sanyu stepped back, no longer burdened by the questions that had once consumed him. He realized that the journey was not over. It had just begun. As Sanyu stepped away from the Mirror of Truth, he felt as though the weight of his old self had been lifted. Yet in its place there was a new understanding, one that felt both freeing and daunting. The reflection he had seen wasn't just a judgment of his past, but an invitation to live with greater honesty, compassion, and awareness. But what did that truly mean? A soft voice broke the silence. Turning, Sanyu saw a monk standing in the shadows of the temple. The monk, dressed in simple robes and holding a wooden staff, had been watching quietly. "What you saw in the mirror is only a fragment," the monk began. "It showed you what you needed to see, not everything that you are. But tell me, what did you learn?" Sanyu hesitated before answering. "I learned that I've spent so much of my life running from my fears, my failures, and even from myself. The mirror showed me the good and the bad, and now I see that they're both a part of who I am. The monk nodded with a gentle smile. "The mirror's lesson is simple yet profound," he said. "True self-awareness isn't about fixing what's broken or perfecting what's flawed. It's about seeing yourself clearly and loving what you see, even when it's difficult." The monk gestured to the temple's walls, where intricate carvings depicted the cycles of life: birth, growth, decay, and renewal. "Do you see these patterns?" the monk asked. "They remind us of impermanence, a truth that flows through all things. Just as the seasons change, so do we. The person you saw in the mirror today is not the same person you will see tomorrow. And that is why we must embrace each moment just as it is." Sanyu felt a pang of fear. "But what if I fail again? What if I forget this lesson?" The monk's eyes softened. "Failure is not the opposite of progress, Sanyu. It is a part of it. Each time you fall, you have the chance to rise again, stronger and wiser. The key is not to avoid failure, but to meet it with kindness toward yourself." Sanyu left the temple later that day, the monk's words echoing in his mind. As he descended the mountain, the world seemed different, not because it had changed, but because he had. The trees appeared more vibrant, the air felt fresher, and even the smallest sounds seemed filled with life. For the first time, Sanyu wasn't consumed by the need to achieve or prove himself. Instead, he felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for simply being. The true transformation wasn't in what Sanyu had seen in the mirror, but in how he chose to carry its lessons forward. The journey to self-awareness doesn't end with one reflection. It is a lifelong practice, a path of learning to see, to accept, and to grow. As Sanyu returned to his village, the lessons of the mirror of truth stayed with him. He no longer looked at the world with the same eyes. Where he once saw obstacles, he now saw opportunities for growth. Where he once feared his imperfections, he now embraced them as part of his journey. And where he once searched for answers outside himself, he now understood that the most profound truths had always been within him. The story of the mirror of truth is not just Sanyu's story. It is yours and mine. Each of us has a mirror within, a reflection that shows us who we are, not just in our most shining moments, but in our darkest ones too. And just like Sanyu, we have the power to look, to learn, and to transform. But here's the thing: self-awareness is not a destination. It is a practice. The reflection you see today may change tomorrow, just as the seasons shift and the tides turn. What matters is not the perfection of the image, but your willingness to see it with honesty and compassion. Are you ready to look into your own mirror of truth? Right now, I invite you to pause for a moment. Take a deep breath. Think about the fears you've been running from or the flaws you've been trying to hide. What would happen if, instead of running or hiding, you chose to accept them? What if you saw them not as barriers, but as bridges to a deeper understanding of yourself? Remember, the journey to self-awareness doesn't require a mystical mirror in a far-off temple. It begins with a single step: the courage to look inward. You don't need to be perfect to be whole. You just need to be willing to embrace the truth of who you are. As you go about your day, carry this lesson with you. The reflection you seek lies not in others' opinions or external validation, but in the quiet moments when you dare to face yourself. It is in these moments that growth begins, and it is in these moments that true peace is found. If this story has touched you, if it has sparked even the smallest flicker of curiosity or courage, take action today. Start by journaling your thoughts, meditating for a few minutes, or having an honest conversation with yourself. And if you feel inspired, share this story with someone who might need it. Let's help each other find our own mirrors of truth. The mirror isn't just a legend. It's a reminder that the answers we seek are already within us. So, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you look away? Or will you take the first step towards seeing yourself clearly? The choice is yours. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you found value in this story, please like, share, and subscribe for more tales that inspire and uplift. Remember, the most powerful transformations begin within.